the current paper. Phil, do you need a rehabilitation? Because Wellbridge of Pinckney makes rehabilitation easier, it says, with their smart design, innovative concepts, authentic hospitality, and commitment to our guests.
Okay.
So if you need a rehabilitation for anything, I'll tell you what, where you go is Wellbridge of Pinckney.
Yes.
They are a big supporter of the current paper and of the show. And we do appreciate all the hard work. And I'll tell you what, people I do know that have gone to Wellbridge find them to be extremely professional and helpful. Mm-hmm. So that's Wellbridge of Pinckney. And they are at 664 South Howell Street, Pinckney, Michigan. Phone number is 517-375-5363. That's the business end of what we're talking about. During break, Phil, you and I were talking about the old adage, the enemy of my enemy is my enemy.
Yes.
And what we have to understand is even though the Sunni and the Shiite are enemies of each other, we're the bigger enemy. Mm-hmm. So at which point, who are they going to join together to fight their enemy? They're going to join with each other to fight us, not join us to fight one of them. In the end, we are on the losing end of that joint venture, so to speak.
Well, I've known a few veterans of the Gulf War and the Afghanistan and they have the idea that they have to bring some of those refugees out of that country because they fought on our side and they would be killed by the opposition if they aren't in a winning position. I can understand that, but what I can't understand is how we bring in 10,000 people off the battlefield, and we have absolutely no idea of what their background is.
I have this acquaintance that used to have a restaurant out towards Wayne Westland area. Mm-hmm. Muslim gentleman. He's first time he asked me to pray for him, I prayed for his conversion. He says, "You know I'm Muslim." I said, "You know I'm a Christian pastor, right? I'm going to pray for your salvation." Yeah. He had no problem. He's seen no problem with calling Jews dogs and Gentiles pigs. Mm-hmm. And he thought it was completely normal to call me a pig to my face and like I'd have no reason to be offended over that, okay? Mm-hmm. Now, he's what we call the moderate, okay? The moderate. So you have to look at the mindset of them. Is all Islam, even the moderates, their end result, they might say we will get to the caliphate through soft jihad, which is we will get to them through by evangelizing, like Christians evangelize with Jesus. We will get to them about reading the Koran and telling them the Koran and showing them how great Allah is, right? So they look at a soft version of jihad to bring them over, but they're constantly working under this concept of jihad. How do we get the infidel over to Allah? That is their final goal. And whether it's Shiite or Sunni, is conversion or you're separated, you are of nothing to them.
Yeah.
Really. You are a dog. So okay, hey Ken, you've been holding very well. Thank you for holding. How are you doing this afternoon?
And I'm doing great, and the reason I'm calling is because I think that what I have to say is important. And I just want to stress something very point to your listeners. I have done, and I encourage your listeners to do the same thing, even though it's a lot of work. I've actually read the Koran cover to cover. And I've also looked at the history of Islam from Muhammad until now. And people, listen to me, Islam is not, I repeat, is not and never has been a belief system based on peace. It's not a religion. It's a political system. And people have got to get it through their thick skull. Actually, I'm afraid that we're dealing with people today that are lazy when it comes to researching and doing their homework. Islam is not peaceful. Islam promotes the extermination of anyone that is not willing to follow the teachings of Islam, the teachings of Muhammad.
Hey, Ken.
I strongly push, read the Quran. I read that Martin Luther said something. The German reformer Martin Luther said something very important. He said that the greatest defense against Islam is to encourage the people to actually read the Quran.
Read it 37 times. But Phil has something to say real quick. What's your question, Phil?
You said it's a belief system based on what? It's based on is it based on conquest or is it based on religion?
Islam, there again, it's really not a religion. It's a political belief system.
It's a political ideology. That's what I was trying to say. 90% of the Quran is political, and less than 10%, closer to 4%, is actually religious.
And the thing we have to look at when we examine both the teachings of the Quran and the history of Islam is that there's no room for any thought outside of Islam.
But what I want to know is it based on conquest? Because
absolutely,
their idea is to either conquest by battle or by outbreeding the opposition.
No, you can go right back.
Well, Muhammad clearly was behind conquest by force.
Yes.
Yeah, Islam has always been a faith by conquest, always going back to the
when we examine the history of Islam, and I encourage your listeners to do what I've done, Islam is a conquest by force. There's no exception. There's no tolerance for anyone that is not willing to submit. Well, I'll tell you one thing.
Make it quick, Ken, because I got two other people want to talk.
Pork on my pepperoni, the bacon. I mean the pepperoni on my pizza. I'm not willing to give up.
Yes.
And you know what? A friend of mine once told me that every time somebody eats bacon, a Muslim angel loses its wings. So on that note, let's go to Jerry on line 2.
Hello, Pastor Dietering. How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
I'm not going to contradict anything you said. You've got a very good show going on. More education is always a good thing. Only thing I do have a bone to pick with you about is your commercial you're running.
Okay, which one do they got running right now? So you can tell me which one you...
The one you got running is Someone Has Said About America commercial.
Yes.
That nice little lead-in you got, folks have said a lot about America. They've also said we're willing to die to save somebody else. We give too much. We don't ask for anything in return.
Yeah, you're missing the actual point of that commercial. I
got the point of your commercial. Okay. It's just the way you phrase the first part of it.
Yeah.
Someone has said, and you go through a whole lot of generalities that are, after a while, it's sort of grating, shall we say?
I'm sorry you took it out. And actually what I was doing is pointing out that a lot of people are looking at ways that a lot of other people come out and say, this is the problem with America. And what I'm trying to do is point out exactly what you think I'm doing. What I'm trying to point out is a lot of people out there are saying this is what's wrong with America. There's this, and they find all these things to nitpick about America, and yet those same people that will nitpick about America will not go out and do something positive for America. Whereas there are those that will go out and do things positive for America. They're very much so, our soldiers and everything else. And that's actually what I'm trying to say in that, but appreciate it.
Yeah, think about how you're approaching it. I know what you're saying. I got the drift of it, unintended. But after a while, you start thinking about how it's coming across. And if someone is not saying the truth about you, and it's being said a lot, you might be, instead of repeating what they're saying, might be wise to directly contradict. But thank you anyway.
Well, thank you for your call.
You got a good show going. You got a good topic. You know your topic. I don't think any of your callers are going to argue with you on your topic.
You have a blessed day, Jerry.
Will do. Thank you a lot. You too. Bye-bye.
Ed, how are you doing today, Ed?
Great, my brother. Thank you for asking. And you?
I am blessed. I am blessed.
Excellent.
The Lord has blessed me.
Well, I was listening to Ken and some of the comments, and I must say I understand the point of saying that Islam is a political movement, but you cannot deny that Islam is a religion. A religion is an attempt of man to reach God. Do we agree?
Yes.
Okay, so basically these people, many Islamists around the world, and I know a couple. I'm friends with one. I used to work for one. We remain friendly. And I want to watch what I post because he is a peaceful Muslim. He has gone to protests at his mosque in Toledo, protests of Islamic terrorism. So, yet he sees the Koran, and I'm not sure if it's the Koran so much as, he would say it is. I don't know if he's read it as much as you have, but he sees Islam as his way of seeking God. And yet he's willing to coexist with other religions. I mean, there's always a chance he may get radicalized, and I very much doubt it about my friend. I just hired a Muslim. Am I afraid he's going to go nutso and start shooting everybody up in the plant? I don't think so.
No, it's and this is kind of the point I try to make about that third style of Islam, and that's what we see as the moderate, and they might take a much more evangelical way of recruiting into Islam. And I'm going to agree with Ken, but it's with the same caveat I said before Ken called. The Quran is primarily a political in nature book, but it's political with a theocracy behind it. In other words, they're trying to build an established politic with Allah as the theocratic ruler of it, that and the prophet.
Well, the question I would ask is, has anybody looked at Lebanon and tried to come up with a reason to question what it is that they have in mind? Because Lebanon was once the Paris of the Middle East, and today, look at it.
But
because they outbred the Catholics, and they purged a bunch of the Christians out of Lebanon before they became the majority.
We have to understand one thing is, even though, and I've had this conversation with lovely Linda. She says, can you be a moderate or a soft-toned Muslim? And the answer is yes, you can. Just as there are people that claim to be of one faith or another, and yet they really don't practice it. But if they actually read the Quran, and they're very devout to the Quran, as the Sunni are more devout to the Quran than the Shiite. And I'd ask, is your friend Shiite or Sunni? I would almost bet by the sounds of it, you would say Shiite, because they also follow the Hadiths in the series. Which are other religious writings, that the Sunni tend to stick with the Quran. But even though the moderate ones will use what's called soft jihad, and we put this word jihad to just think as a violent thing, but soft jihad is a soft war, a soft movement.
It appears to me that the only place soft jihad, where they practice soft jihad, is in countries where they're the minority. Wherever they're the majority, it is either do my way or you lose your head.
What happens is you always have, the Catholic Church has the Westboro Baptist Church.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Not something we like to claim,
yeah.
Not something we want to claim, right?
But what would happen?
Wait a minute. Can I?
Yes.
That's pretty much recognized, not even a Catholic church. Or did you say Catholic? I'm sorry.
I said the Westboro Baptist Church.
Yeah, okay. Basically, it's not even a church. It's a family of lawyers, and it's a scam. They just happen to call themselves Christians. But
the Westboro Baptist Church are the ones that would go to military funerals and that whole.
It's a family of lawyers who are scam artists.
Right. My point being,
it's almost as political, frankly, as much as a
exactly
hammer veiled in religion as Islam.
You're making my point. Is even though we as Christians don't accept them as they give us Christians a black eye, right, because of their behavior, because they wear this Christian moniker, okay.
Right.
You have these sects in Islam that are going to be more violent than other sects. Now, this is all going to get wrapped up with a very surprising message at the end. It'll be long before the end. Is even the moderates in the end would love, for the sake of their God, to see everyone convert to Allah, because they honestly believe that He is the one true God. Got it?
Yeah.
So if the same as we would love to see them all convert and accept Jesus Christ as their Savior.
Except we don't do it by the sword.
We do not do it by the sword. And I have to say, in history in the past, there have been a few that have tried to do it by the sword, and they were wrong for doing so.
All right. Well, then I guess my question is this: what are we supposed to do when if we say that it's primarily a political organization? And trust me, I'm not pro-Muslim. You know me.
I know.
I'm trying to be honest and fair here and constitutional. If the moderates say it's their religion, and they are not promoting terrorism because they are in the minority, how do we go about banning them, forbidding mosques, forbidding their assembling together because we consider them a terrorist organization, when those moderates have not exhibited what many